get up and catch a bus at 5:30, 6 o'clock. It increases fuel costs for that district to transport those children to and from school. Sometimes the buses are having to run 2 routes in the morning and 2 routes in the evening. And so it's costing us more, and it's dangerous. And so you may have heard of the group Accelerate, or actually, I think that's the name of the program they came up with. It's the Mississippi Economic Council. They put together a blue ribbon panel. The governor appointed Joe Sanderson of Sanderson Farms, one of our state's business leaders, to head the panel, and they came up with a program to fund this infrastructure spending that everybody essentially agrees that we need. And we couldn't get it done last year because nobody wanted to talk about raising taxes. There was never a plan that was actually presented, but there was this discussion about raising the gas tax, which is our primary funding mechanism for road and bridge repair in the state of Mississippi. Our gas tax is relatively low. It hasn't been raised in, I think, 20-something years, maybe since 1987. And one of the ideas was just raise the gas tax and do it with the gas tax. Well, there is a group of people at the Capitol that is not going to raise any tax. They're just simply not going to vote for a tax increase in any way whatsoever. So that was gone. They weren't going to do that. So they started talking about other ways to do it. There was discussion of a lottery. In the House of Representatives, we passed a lottery bill last year. Actually, we passed 2 different lottery bills, but they got killed in the Senate, and the governor was not for a lottery. The governor is now saying that he may be open to a lottery, which is encouraging because we have to come up with some way to generate some revenue if we're going to do this. The other thing that was talked about was increasing the sales tax. I would be opposed to increasing the sales tax to fund roads and bridges, and a lot of people would be. The last time we increased the sales tax was over 20 years ago, and some of you may recall it went from 6% to 7%, or 6 cents on the dollar, 7 cents on the dollar, with that 1 cent addition being dedicated to classroom supplies, so that teachers wouldn't have to go down to the local store and buy paper and pens and paste and all the things that they need to be able to teach children. I think one time in the 20-something years since that tax increase was passed has all of that money gone to classroom supplies. This is the problem with the Mississippi legislature, folks. If you pass a bill that says you're going to increase the sales tax by 1 cent, 2 cents, whatever, to go to roads and bridges, there is absolutely no guarantee that it will ever go to roads and bridges. So we simply can't do it that way in my mind. Besides, I think that is a regressive tax that puts a larger burden on the poor. Everybody has to buy groceries. And we're one of few states that has a tax on groceries. But I just don't think that taxing folks in a regressive manner is the answer to this problem. Yes, ma'am.
Haven't they given tax breaks to large corporations, like extraordinary tax breaks?
Yes, ma'am. We have. Over the past 5 or 6 years, we have passed a number of tax breaks, and I have an article here that came out in July of 2016, and there's a list here. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's an entire page long of tax breaks that we have handed out. It goes on to the next page over that period of time. And the impact on this year's budget for these tax breaks is $291 million. And of course, last year we passed what our Lieutenant Governor likes to call the largest tax break in history, and it will be a total of $415 million. That will begin hitting our revenue stream next year. So I mentioned earlier, $415 million, $300 million, that's about $700 million of revenue we've just taken out of our budget. Just imagine if you took 10% of whatever your income is and you said, I'm not going to do anything with that, I'm just going to give it back to whomever was paying it to me. Now, I understand that this is our money. We send it to Jackson, and we're always concerned about efficiencies. We want to make sure our government is spending that money wisely and it's working for us. But when we have dire problems like those that I've mentioned, I don't think it's wise to cut taxes to this level. So, yes, ma'am, we have cut corporate taxes at this point approximately $700 million. And the idea now, and let me give the other side of the story. The idea is that if you cut taxes for the wealthy or for a company, then they're going to take that money, they're going to reinvest it in their physical plant and in their people and their products, and they're going to create more jobs, and that rising tide is going to lift all boats. That is one economic theory. I don't agree with that economic theory, but that is the economic theory that all of these tax cuts are based upon.
Well, the statistics bear out that we've lost jobs, not created jobs, in spite of these tax cuts.
That is correct. I've got two questions before I get to you back there, Rhonda.
Are these tax cuts or tax incentives or both?
I'd have to look through the list to be certain, but I believe that it is a combination of the two.
What's the difference between an incentive and a cut?
Yeah, they're definitely a mixture, because I see the Motion Picture Incentive Act on here. The difference between a tax and a cut is that your effective tax rate that you would pay on your adjusted gross income would be reduced. A tax incentive is just that, to try to incentivize somebody to do something by dangling a carrot in front of them. And the idea is that with a tax incentive, that we wouldn't be receiving tax benefits anyway unless we incentivize this industry or this person to do this thing. And so we ought to give them some sort of incentive to come in and do that which they might not otherwise have done. And the most typical way a tax incentive is used is to attract business. And so what our folks who do this economic development work for us on a statewide basis, the Mississippi Development Authority, what they do is they work with large companies like Continental Tire that's coming into Hinds County to put together packages for them, which are usually a combination of tax breaks at the local level for the county, and tax incentives, and then we have provisions that they have to provide a certain number of jobs with target dates, and the jobs have to pay a certain average amount so that we then get a return on that investment. I don't know that anybody has tracked any of these big projects to determine whether we are actually getting the return on our investment. They do create jobs. They do when they build the plant, they're creating construction jobs. And when they get up and running, they normally create a lot of decent paying jobs. But I don't know that anybody has actually put pencil to paper to determine whether we get a true benefit out of that. Barbara?
My question is, because we're cutting all of these social programs, is there a way to go back to these corporations and cut some of those tax breaks and incentives?
Yes, there is a way, because the $415 million tax cut we passed last year has not been implemented yet. So nobody is noticing a benefit from that yet. We could roll that back. That would be $415 million that would come in, and we could put that on roads and bridges. And in fact, that's what I've advocated doing, and several people aside from me have advocated doing that. It's more difficult to roll back the tax breaks that have been created over the 5 or 6 years past. Some of those, we will never be able to recoup. We've already lost that money, but we could roll those back and generate that revenue going forward. And look, our tax code, folks, Jeff Smith, who is the chairman of Ways and Means, will agree with me on this, that we have too many loopholes. And the way this has operated over the last 20 years, so longer than I've been in the legislature, if you have a good lobbyist, then you go to the Mississippi legislature and you can create a tax loophole for yourself. So we have this tax code, but then we have all these exceptions to the tax code. And there are 30 or 40 exceptions for one type of business or the other. And everybody can justify it. I mean, there's a good argument for every one of them. But when the exceptions swallow the rule, it's not really working out. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in September of 1990, IRS versus Gulf Oil had a lot to do with the fact that Gulf Oil owned more land than they did oil. Since the 60s and 70s, with the construction of the interstate, Gulf Oil is buying a lot of land south of the future construction of I-10 in Alabama, in the Foley, Fairhope, Gulf Shores area, as well as Pensacola, in anticipation of developing that land in the 70s and 80s. They built Holiday Inns on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, put Florida out the unbrochure acts in the hotels, and proceeded exporting our economy to those economies over there. In '79, we passed a tourism tax that spoiled these hotels in their deliberate attempts to destroy our economy. and we continue to grow with that tourism tax taking care of the hotels and not the small businesses. Chicago had its best year to date in the 1990s before the construction of the first casino. The state has forced the casinos to build hotels and has not asked them to put brochure acts supporting the local economy in their hotels. In effect, we are not stimulating small business unless somebody like me comes in and makes a forceful effort to do so, as I have done with Bay St. Louis and Ocean Springs, Pastor Shan, and Gulfport in the past. I haven't received checks from the bankers who serve on the boards of these tourism bureaus. And I've received thousands of checks from people in the tourism industry over the years. Have you ever considered privatizing tourism taxes to where an individual like me with an education and a spirit of saving Mississippi's Gulf Coast economy has an opportunity to earn a living?
To answer that direct question, no. I don't even know how that would work.
The word privatization is the word that the state needs to learn. I learned it in East Europe when there was no government. And
there are a lot of people at the Capitol who believe in privatization, and we've privatized a lot of things over the last, since I've been in the legislature. For instance, we've privatized child support enforcement. We have allowed, for instance, the Attorney General now can't represent all the agencies because we allow the agencies to go hire their own white shoe Jackson law firms to represent them. That's privatization. I mean, there's been a move to privatize all sorts of functions of government. So that's going on. You have a willing ear at the Capitol if you want to talk about privatization. Your point about small business is a good one, though, because I mentioned the MDA a moment ago.